Hello, I'm Dr. Timothy Lewis, and today I get to talk about the method for the book, The Poetics of Matthew 1. And the method sounds super easy. It sounds much easier than it is to actually employ. It's basically finding a question that the text can answer. So a question that we have about the text, and then finding the answer in the text. So, sounds very easy, but it's actually really difficult to restrain ourselves and not look for the answer in another book. So it's very tempting to go over to the book of Luke. The Gospel according to Luke has quite a lot of overlap with what we find in Matthew. So it's easy to say, oh, what does Matthew mean? Oh, well, let's just have a look in Luke. Whatever Luke is saying, let's import that into Matthew. And then we end up sort of mixing the two books so that we can't really distinguish the different writing styles. You can't really distinguish the different stories anymore. And so Matthew's no longer Matthew. It's kind of a Luke, but it's kind of like a mixture. And so yeah, it's really a challenge to see. Okay, we've got a question. Something doesn't seem very clear. Like for example, why are there 14 plus 14 plus 14 generations that it has in the genealogy? Or why does it say all this has now happened seemingly before it's all happened? Or why does it say Joseph was a righteous man if he was planning to do something that wasn't the right thing to do? So all of these kind of questions, it's tempting to look for the answer outside the book of Matthew or outside Matthew chapter 1. Sometimes the answer might be in a few chapters later, like with the divorce issue. It's helpful to go to the other passages in Matthew where what's the assumption about divorce in the case in cases of porneia. So that's helpful to get a definition of righteous. What does a right acting man do according to Matthew? So a definition according to the text of Matthew, rather than importing somebody else's definition. What does Paul think about certain words, certain topics? That's not going to be as relevant for interpreting according to Matthew what's going on in Matthew. So yeah, so the method is basically restraining ourselves to using the text of Matthew as much as we can. I mean, sometimes it might be just we can't figure it out. We're just so desperate that as a last resort, we might go to another book and say, well, it might be what this other book is saying. But the method in the Poetics of Matthew 1 is really trying to just stick to what does Matthew chapter 1 say, and is there enough logic in the immediate surrounding textual context? So yeah, it sounds like a really simple method. It's not really it's not really doing much new. It's really just doing less. It's about doing less, not going to other books. So it's a bit of a challenge. And so the kind of questions that the text can answer, not every question, not every kind of question is answerable according to the text. Some questions are just historical questions. How much did Jesus weigh? What did he look like when he was born? Who else was living in the house at the time? Matthew chapter 1 is not going to answer those kinds of questions. Yeah, so it's a matter of finding a question that doesn't seem so clear in the text, but it's a question for which the text could be answering, and then really looking for the answer in the text. So it's a fairly basic method. It sounds really simple. It sounds much simpler than it is to put into practice. Yeah, so the methodology just goes through some example kind of questions and how we usually try to answer them, and how perhaps there's an answer in the text. That's about it for the methodology. So next time we'll get on to chapter 2 for studying the Poetics of Matthew 1.